Hi folks, and welcome into the Truck King YouTube channel. This Ford F-150 Lightning was really the first all-electric mainstream truck to hit the market. Now, since its introduction, we have new entries from other big players like General Motors and from Tesla, and we actually recently got a chance to drive both the Silverado EV and the Tesla Cybertruck. So in this video, we're gonna go for a drive in this Lightning, look at all the features, and then talk about, is this truck still relevant, or have the competitors come along and really jumped ahead of it? Let's dive into all of that right now. Let's take a walk around first on this. This is the F-150 Lightning Lariat. So that's one trim down from the top luxury model, but that also means it gets lots of features. So this truck has the extended range battery pack that has 131 usable kilowatt hours. Now I say usable because it's actually a 150 kilowatt hour battery pack, but Ford reserves those 19 kilowatt hours to help preserve the battery's life. So they never let you kind of get into that 19. So then even if you get to zero, the battery still has some charge in it, and that is better for the battery. Now, pretty much all brands do this, but most of them don't reserve such a big chunk of the battery, but yeah, Ford does that. So with this extended range battery, you're talking about a range here in Canada of 515 kilometers. Although when I had this thing charged up to 100%, I saw a reported range at 492 kilometers. So you can say yes, when it's full, you're getting around 500 kilometers of all-electric range. And now this truck is also four-wheel drive, and it packs 580 horsepower. So yes, the power is pretty ridiculous. And if you're gentle on it, you can actually get those range numbers. That's been my experience driving it this week. Now let's talk a little bit about styling. I mentioned this is the Lariat. Now what you're getting with that package is all the body color stuff. So the body color bumper, body color door handles, and mirror caps. I do think it looks pretty sharp. And I think Ford, of all the brands, you know, they started with the base F-150. They changed the front end styling, but besides that, it still looks pretty much like a standard F-150. So why don't you drop in the comments now and let me know what you think of the styling here on the Lightning, especially as it compares to both the Silverado EV and the crazy styling of the Cybertruck.
Hey folks, great news. You've seen us pitching Giddy Ups before. Well, we ran out last fall. Now we have a whole new supply. These ones right here. Hey, these are the synthetic type. They only come in black in this design. However, these are bargain price, 25 bucks a piece, or we'll sell you a set of 4 for 80. Listen, for anybody that needs a little help getting into their tall trucks or SUVs, Giddy Ups can't be beat. So look for the link down below, click it, go right to our website. It's as easy as that. Get these in your truck today.
Let's look at the utility on this Lightning now. So that starts up front with the frunk. This is something that all these electric trucks have, and it's super useful. Every time I'm driving these, I'm always so impressed by how much space these things have and just how much stuff I constantly put in here. Rather than tossing backpacks, bags in the back seat, now you can toss them in the front and keep your interior clean. So I like that. There's a bunch of features in here too. You're getting a bit of storage down there underneath, and you can see you could insert some dividers there if you wanted to keep that stuff separate. There's some hard D-rings down here in the corners. There's some little hangers up here in the wall. And then you're also getting a power panel over there, which is nice to have. 2.4 kilowatts, 4 3-prong plugs, and a USB-A and a USB-C port. So yeah, nice to be able to charge your stuff up while it's in your frunk as well. So we can close that up, walk down the side of the truck, and one thing I'll point out, you do get a set of standard running boards here on this Lariat, and I always like this. It comes a little bit back over the bed, not too far, but just far enough that I could get up here and actually access things in my bed. And these beds are so tall now that, yeah, that is important. Now all the way back here we get to our tailgate. Now this is a fully powered tailgate here on this Lariat model, so down and up, and it has the classic Ford bed step. Ford was the first company to come out with a bed step. It's basically been the same ever since, and it works excellently. Once it's out, climb up. It really makes that step in height not too tall. And if you're going in and out of your bed, unloading something or loading it, it's gonna make a big difference. Now there's a load of features in here we have to talk about too. Starting on the tailgate, you're getting a couple rulers there. So yeah, if you wanna measure something, you can do that. You're getting little slots here. These are for pencils and nuts and bolts. And these guys actually specifically are phone holders. So if you're watching a YouTube video on how to build something on your tailgate, you can do it right there, which is cool. Now over here at the sides of the tailgate, these are actually tie down. So if you have lumber or something that comes out over the gate, you can use that. Oh, it's windy today. You can use these to strap that down. I appreciate that too. Now moving back, we do get LED lighting here in the bed. That's controlled by a button right there. And you also get power, Pro Power on board. So this right here is a 7.2 kilowatt, 240 volt plug. And then down below, you're getting 2.4 kilowatts out of those guys. So again, awesome to be able to plug into this thing. You're also getting Ford's cleat system here, so you can buy all kinds of different accessory cleats to put on. When it comes to hard tie downs, you're getting one down here in the back corner and one up here. I do wish you had more hard tie downs. That's something that General Motors does, but Ford doesn't do. The other thing I should mention, this is a short bed, and this is the only way you can get the Lightning is crew cab short bed. So when it comes to overall bed size, the Lightning is smaller than both the Silverado EV and the Tesla Cybertruck, and like I said, this is the only way you can get your Lightning. Now I'll pack this up. We'll send that tailgate up. And then I can mention towing and payload. Now our truck here today does not have the max tow package. So off that 2-inch hitch receiver down there, you can tow just 5,000 pounds. I do wish that number was a little bit higher, but yeah, if you don't go for that package, just 5,000. If we did have max tow, we could do 10,000 on this truck. And now let's check the payload here on the door jamb sticker. That comes in at 1,786 pounds, which is a really good number compared to any gas F-150. And it's right around the same number as the Silverado EVs we've tested, but it is not as much as the Cybertruck. And yes, the Cybertruck has an incredibly impressive payload at 2,500 pounds. Time to go for a drive now in the Lightning, and we are going to hook up a trailer because I'm going to tow some wave runners today so we can look at the camera system. So there's your first view, sort of the top down and the rear. Now this top down view, you can actually zoom in on specific corners, which is pretty cool. Then we also can zoom in here. That's our hitch view. We'll use that in a second when we get closer. You get a wide rear view there. We do have trailer reverse guidance on this truck. We're not going to use it right now, but it is here, so some cool trailering features. That's your auxiliary camera. You could set that up on the back of your trailer or even inside your trailer. And then you also get a Chimsel camera there looking down into your bed, which is cool. So yeah, loads of camera views, but this is what we're going to use for now. So let's back out of reverse guidance. Get nice and close. And right about here, zoom in. And boom, easy. All right, folks, now we're here driving the Lightning. First things first, let's feel the power. Sport mode and full power. Oh, and it's ridiculous. 0 to 60 is rated at 4.5 seconds here in the F-150 Lightning, and it's just that typical EV power. It's incredibly smooth, and it just pulls with so much torque right off the line. You know, we've been driving the Lightning now for a couple of years, but I'm still not over it. It's still ridiculous how quick this truck is. And what's crazier is, yeah, the Cybertruck, the Silverado EV, they're even quicker 0 to 60 than this truck is. So we are living in a pretty wild age where we have these massive 6, 7, 8, 9,000 pound electric pickup trucks that can accelerate up to highway speeds in, you know, the blink of an eye. So that is pretty cool here in the Lightning. Sure, if you value absolute performance, both the Cybertruck and the Silverado are a little quicker than this, but man, I also don't see really the world in which you're gonna need that performance out of this vehicle that often, besides just putting your friends in here and saying, hey, watch what I can do. So yes, acceleration in the Lightning is a little bit worse than the competition, but it's still ridiculous for what this vehicle is. Now let's talk about the way it just, cruises down the road. And the truth is, in my experience, all of these electric trucks all drive pretty similar, and that's because the recipe is kind of the same. They all have a big heavy battery pack, but it's down in the floor, so it's really low in the vehicle. So that's offering a near 50-50 weight distribution, which is not something pickup trucks have ever had traditionally, because there was always a big heavy engine up front and then a light bed out back. Well, now we have much better weight distribution, and again, we have a lower center of gravity because of where that weight is located. So these trucks are heavier, but because where they can focus the weight, they all come across feeling really planted. Planted is the best word I can use for any of these EV trucks. They just want to drive nice and straight down the road, so minimal input is needed in your hands, and this Lightning is no different. Now, another thing that sets this truck apart from a standard F-150 is independent suspension all the way around, so you no longer have a solid axle in the back, and that also just equals a really comfortable ride. So yes, when it comes to F-150 Lightning, and this has been the same since it came out, I think it drives really nice going down the road. It's comfortable, it's really quiet in here. It's also really controlled, not a lot of roll going through the corners, any of that sort of soft feeling. So everything feels stiff enough to be confident, but also soft enough to be comfortable. Yeah, it's nailing that mix. Now, I won't say it's better than the Cybertruck or the Silverado. I feel like they're all basically nailing that same mix, and because they have those sort of similar parts and similar engineering, yeah, they all come across feeling quite a bit the same from behind the wheel. The one major difference that stands out in the Cybertruck is the steering. The steering rack in the Cybertruck is incredibly quick, so you just end up putting in the tiniest little inputs, and it takes some getting used to, but you can get used to it. So yeah, besides that one aspect, I'll say it again, all three of these trucks that I'm kind of comparing today, they really all do drive pretty much the same. Now, another important aspect of any electric vehicle is regenerative braking. So essentially what that means is when you're coming to a stop, I'm approaching a stop sign right now, as I'm stopping, the electric motor is actually generating power. It becomes a little generator, and it's using the momentum I've built up to essentially generate that power. So right here, I didn't touch the brake pedal. That was all regenerative braking. So all you do is lift off the throttle and the vehicle starts to come to a stop. Now here in the F-150, you basically only have one way to control it, and that is with one pedal drive. So I can turn that off or on. Now if I turn it off, it drives like a standard F-150. I just lift it off and we're just coasting. There's a little bit of regen when I'm coasting. You can still feel it, but it's really not much. And then if I turn it on, when I lift off, the stop actually is fairly aggressive the way it's slowing this thing down. So there's some pros and cons with regenerative braking that I want to talk about. The largest pro, this is obvious, you're scrubbing back power. You're actually putting power back into the battery. And if you didn't have regenerative braking, well then yeah, you're essentially just wasting that power when you're stopping. And that's what vehicles have done forever. When you're stopping, you're using friction. Friction creates heat. So yes, you're converting sort of the energy of the vehicle moving forward into heat energy, but that heat isn't used for anything. It's just dissipated into the air. So now with an EV, you're able to regain that energy. So that is a good thing. Here's the biggest con, and I'm actually going to credit Porsche for coming out and saying, you know what, regenerative braking is not great all the time. And what Porsche said is, every time you lift your foot off of the accelerator, if you're slowing down, inevitably you're going to have to speed back up. So the power that you're scrubbing off, you're just going to use to get back up to speed. So Porsche says, no, you should be able to coast. Sometimes coasting is the most efficient way of driving, and then you should be using the regen only when you have to stop. So again, for example, I'm on a country road right here. Maybe now I've hit my speed. I'm going downhill, so I want to lift off and just coast down the hill. Well, with one pedal, that's not possible. Right away, it starts slowing the vehicle down, and then I get to the next hill, And look, I'm speeding back up. So again, I'm gonna use the power that I just scrubbed back. So I kind of agree with this. I think coasting makes a lot of sense, but then when I'm approaching a stop sign, I have to stop whether I like it or not. So in this case, regen makes total sense. I might as well scrub back that power. So the one pedal drive doesn't really allow you to do that. So in my opinion, you're actually best off to not use the one pedal if you want to maximize the power coming out of that battery. You want to coast when necessary and then also regen when you have to come to a stop. That's where Porsche thinks the smartest way of going about this is, and I happen to agree with them. Now, talking about the application in all of these trucks, here in the Lightning, I already said, you either have one pedal drive on or off, and that's it. In the Cybertruck, you can adjust the one pedal drive, so you can make it basically go from a minimum, medium, or maximum regen braking. So then it will apply that regen braking with different levels of power. In the Silverado EV, in my opinion, it actually is the best solution. So they have one pedal drive on or off, but they also have the regen on demand paddle over at General Motors. That's a little paddle here on the back of your steering wheel, and as the name suggests, it's actually pressure sensitive, so it's going to control the regenerative braking. If you squeeze that paddle, you're going to get max regen. If you just lightly touch that paddle, you're just going to get a little bit of regen. And actually, the way I think about it is it's almost like a little brake pedal for your hand, because as you're approaching a stop sign, you can just sort of lightly grab it and slowly slow down, or grab it hard and aggressively stop. I think that's the best solution, because you can always tailor the regen to the situation you're in. And I just also like the fact that I can control it with my hand. It has that tactile feel, essentially then allowing me to forget about the brake pedal for the most part and do all my braking up here with my left hand. So yes, I think the regen on demand paddle is the absolute best solution. And then second best is Tesla, because at least they have levels of regen, so you can adjust it based on what you like. And then here in the Lightning, yeah, it's just basic on or off. I wish I did have more control over how much regen I was getting. Now I do want to touch on towing, because we've had a chance to tow with all of these trucks. Recently, we took the Cybertruck and the Silverado EV out and we towed identical Airstream travel trailers. Here on the Lightning, we have towed previously on the channel. We've done our 7,000-pound concrete blocks. And then right now, I actually have a pair of Wave Runners. Oh, and by the way, we're testing those Wave Runners over on TK Power Sports. If you didn't already know it, we have another channel where we focus on all power sports, ATVs, side-by-sides, Wave Runners, snowmobiles. So if you love that stuff, go check out TK Power Sports. But yeah, we have a pair of Wave Runners right now. So I hooked the Wave Runners up here to the Lightning. That's not a big load for this truck, maybe 2,000 pounds, but it just reinforced what I already knew, which is that this is a solid towing vehicle for all the same reasons that I already mentioned. Incredible power and torque from a standstill, and then you're getting that planted feeling from the battery pack. And so when you put weight on the back, yeah, it just feels absolutely solid. And with a 2,000-pound Wave Runner trailer, I could barely feel the trailer back there. And now, of course, I'm sure you're curious about consumption. Well, in this case, the consumption really didn't go up that much. I mean, a pair of Wave Runners, it doesn't weigh very much. They're quite aerodynamic as well, so it's not really putting a lot of drag onto the truck. Normally, I'm seeing 26 to 28-ish kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And once I stuck the trailer on, I was getting about 30 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So yeah, consumption did go up a little bit, but not a lot. So I'm just saying this, and it might seem obvious, but I think somebody who's never towed before, they might not know this. All trailers are not created equal. Just because the weight is one thing, that doesn't mean that they're going to add a lot of consumption onto your vehicle. A lot of it's based on aerodynamics and the aerodynamic drag that trailer has. So when it comes to something like a pair of Wave Runners, yeah, they're really not going to drive up the consumption that much. Now I've kind of outlined sort of my thoughts on how the truck actually drives and handles, and the short version is really good. I want to talk a little bit more about sales and sort of EV truck adoption, because I just did a full video on EV truck sales through the first half of 2025. Make sure you go check that out if you really want a detailed look at it. But I'll give you the short strokes, which is that the Lightning is down year over year, Cybertruck is down year over year, Silverado EV is actually up year over year. It's the only one that's kind of enjoying some sales success, but it's still selling less than half of what the Lightning is selling. So it's just such a tiny sliver of the market. And to be fair, Silverado EV 2025 is kind of the first model year they've had a whole range of trucks. In 2024, they were only offering work trucks and RSTs. So yeah, there was limiting factors there. There's less limiting factors for 2025. So what I think is interesting is that the Lightning has been around the longest now, right? The Lightning was the first one of these trucks to hit the market, and Ford didn't take the same strategy as the other brands. Ford said, you know what? We already have a successful half-ton truck in the F-150. Let's just take it and electrify it. And I think the biggest pro to that strategy was the timing. The fact that this thing has been around now for a couple of years, I really do believe that provides some confidence in the marketplace. Consumers are going, you know what? It's not just some flash in the pan. Ford didn't give up on it. They're still building it. We can see a little bit about reliability now because they've been on the road for a few years. And I think slowly but surely, every year the Lightning's on sale, it just builds up a little bit more relevance in the marketplace. People learn more about it. So yeah, I really do think it matters that Ford was first, and I think that strategy is paying off. Now, the downside of that strategy is they had to work with this footprint. They had to work with the existing frame and the existing body. They couldn't come along and change things up massively. And what that means is that of these three trucks, the F-150 Lightning gets the worst range because they had to fit the battery pack between the frame rails. When Tesla built the Cybertruck and when GM went ahead and built their Silverado and Sierra EV platform, they could put in bigger batteries because they designed for a bigger battery right from the start. So Ford obviously looked at it and said, you know what, yeah, we're going to be a bit limited in our range. However, we're going to be first to market, and I think they're enjoying sales success because of it. Now, in 2024, it is true that the Cybertruck was the best-selling electric truck on the market. It outsold the Lightning by about 5,000 units, but it's also true that through the first half of 2025, the Lightning has been the best-selling EV truck by a lot more than 5,000 units. Cybertruck has really taken a downturn, and I think we can all admit Cybertruck is a great product, but the styling is always going to limit who wants to buy that thing. So there was a ton of early adopters, people that thought it was super cool and exciting to get this wild-looking vehicle. But as those go away, there's just going to be less consumer demand sort of in the general marketplace. Yeah, because the styling is a limiting factor. So I kind of feel personally like we've already seen the peak of Cybertruck sales, and now they're probably going to fall off and then remain steady, where F-150 Lightning, this is like every other F-150 you've ever been in. Sure, the styling isn't the exact same. They put that light bar up front. They changed the nose. But when you sit inside here, and we test F-150s all the time, if you didn't know this was a Lightning, yeah, there's nothing in here that makes it any different. And I also believe consumers enjoy that. Consumers have been in these F-150s for so many years. You know, maybe they've already owned a previous gen or a current gen, and then getting over here into the Lightning, there's no learning curve. Well, a small learning curve, but there's just this feeling of, yeah, that's just like every other F-150. And I think that's paying off for them. And while I know there's probably some younger buyers yelling, no, I want the newest, coolest thing and I want it to look like a spaceship, I think we can also all admit that the majority of people buying these super expensive EV trucks are older folks who've been driving trucks for decades now, so they don't want to get into some new crazy spaceship. And my dad said as much when we drove the Silverado EV and the Cybertruck back to back. The Cybertruck, you know, everything is in the screen. It's all dependent on the technology. Now, the technology in that thing is incredible. I think the Cybertruck delivers the best information on EV consumption, just the best overall information package on everything it's doing, and I do think that screen looks nice, has so much packed into it. So I think Tesla's doing a great job, but he is correct that if you're used to an interior like this, getting into that, it's jarring. It doesn't feel familiar whatsoever. So yes, familiarity and just the amount of time that this Lightning has been on the market, I think that's why it is doing so well. However, it's not doing as well as Ford thought it would do. Ford initially thought they could sell 100,000 of these things every year, and right now it's looking like they're going to move, around 30,000 in 2025. So the EV truck kind of outlook is a bit of a mixed bag. It hasn't been nearly as successful as these brands thought it was going to be, hoped it was going to be. However, slowly but surely, I think adoption is coming. And sure, I can see a day when we have a lot more electric trucks on the road. I just think it's going to sort of take another 5-10 years till we're at a place where the general consumer accepts something like this. Well, folks, we are coming to the end of this video. Now, I do think, honestly, with what else is out there on the market, this F-150 Lightning is still competitive. Yeah, the Cybertruck and the Silverado EV are better in some areas, namely range, and that's kind of the biggest deal. But still, even though they've sort of leapfrogged the Lightning in a couple of ways, I think this is absolutely right there with what's available today. But one of the big questions is, when are the upgrades coming for the Lightning? And I'm not sure they really are. And that is because Ford is busy right now building a brand new electric truck from the ground up. So they started with a clean white sheet of paper, and they're designing a new electric truck just like the way Tesla and Chevrolet did. Now, they're calling it Project T3, and they have already announced that it's been delayed until the second half of 2027. So we got a bit more waiting to do, but they also announced that that platform is also gonna have a mid-sized electric pickup truck on it, and I think truly that's the sweet spot in the market. We need smaller, more lightweight electric pickup trucks. That just lends itself to better range, and I think that's what most people want. So yes, I'm excited to see that smaller electric truck and the bigger one. So we're probably not gonna see any big changes to the Lightning, I would guess, because all of these new trucks are in the works. So yeah, we got a little bit more waiting to do. 2027, we'll probably see them next year in 2026. And until then, the Lightning will soldier on. So yeah, folks, I want to hear your thoughts now. Let me know what you think of everything you've seen in this video. What do you think about the Lightning? What do you think about how it stacks up with the Silverado EV and the Tesla Cybertruck? And if you missed it, we did a towing comparison between those two, so make sure you go check that out here on the channel. And as always, while you're down there leaving that comment, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, hit join to become a member, and then come right back here to Truck King and see what we're testing next. See ya.